Ymedia Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.
Now we have Ramona Singh with us. Ramona ji, warm welcome on Ymedia. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, good, good. Thanks for joining. And we'll quickly, there are lots of topics that we need to discuss. We will talk about Ymedia political Sensex. Avi Lois, the new leader for NDP. Will NDP come back? That's what he's claiming. He's targeting the billionaires. He seems to be quite anti-capitalism from his initial speech. That's the way it looks. We'll talk about that. And what are the implications for the Liberals and the Conservatives? Will NDP be back? And they're saying we'll be forming the government. Of course, he has to make that statement. We'll talk about that. The other thing, and we'll include the three by-elections. The other thing we'll talk about is affordability. There have been some measures taken by the government regarding the affordability. So at Ymedia Business and Wealth segment, whether these measures are really helping a common Canadian, whether we just heard an announcement where Prime Minister Mark Carney and Premier Ford, they made an announcement to cut down the development charges for the builders. We also heard another announcement where HST rebate as well. So combined together, will this help the affordability? Will this help the housing sector? Builders for sure, they are going to make some gains here, but are they going to pass on those gains? And will this help their cause as well? We talk about affordability. At the international level, Ymedia Foreign Policy Report. At Ymedia Foreign Policy Report, whatever US President Donald Trump has said in the last 24 hours, again, he's been threatening Iran as well. And of course, he's offering them some olive branch as well. So where is he heading? What is his plan? Or he just wants to keep people guessing? Iran at this position, they don't seem to be in much of a mood of negotiation right now. Who is winning the war? We'll talk about that. Yes, who is winning the war? We need to address this head on. Who is winning the war? We'll talk about that. And mediation from Pakistan, will that happen or not? There have been a lot of discussion. Associated Press too, Canadian press, they're all repeating mediation in Islamabad, Pakistan. But is it actually happening? Without Israel, Iran really not committing, is that a possibility? India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he spoke to US President Donald Trump, and there is news in American media that Elon Musk was also on the call. Was he really on the call? We'll talk about that. So lots to discuss right now. So why don't we start with the Ymedia political Sensex? Ramona, we see a new leader, Avi Lois. What did you make out of his speech? He was targeting the capitalist in his speech, and he even named Gail Weston, and he says many of these big guys, they're making billions of dollars, so there is lots of money, but not for the common Canadian. So money is there, but he wants to shift the balance of power, the balance of money in favor of a common Canadian. So your analysis on this?
Yes, absolutely. The former journalist who hosted several, programs on City TV, CBC, Al Jazeera, filmmaker Avi Lewis is now the NDP leader. Now, he was very strategic in how he positioned what he campaigned on. Essentially, we have what appears to be, Carney, which we'll talk about the by-elections, getting a majority. He cannot be in a position where he's going to be very central, where what we saw Thomas Mulcair do. What he's doing here, Avi Lewis, is he's positioning himself as more of a socialist Democrat, what we've seen with the likes of Bernie Sanders in the United States. So, he won decisively with 56% of the vote within the first ballot. So, it was uncontested in terms of where the membership saw him as clearly the front runner to be able to, bring back the federal NDPs to party status. This is, so who is he? He's replaced Jagmeet Singh, who, brought the NDPs down to 6 MPs in the last election. And, when you look at the stats of what happened to the NDP in the last few elections under Jagmeet Singh, you saw that the NDPs lost votes to the Conservatives. And just in the recent election, where they lost connection to the average blue-collar worker, the unions, which is what we've seen Doug Ford do in Ontario, taking that voter share away from the NDP. We saw that happen with the federal Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre. And of course, it's no surprise that within the last decade under Trudeau as well as Carney, they were chipping away at the NDP voter base. So essentially, this is something that leader Lewis is trying to get back of. So who is he? Let's look at that was the foundation of where the NDPs are. Let's look at who he is. He's well known, as the broadcaster, but he also has politics run in the family. So his father was the former Ontario NDP leader, Stephen Lewis. His grandfather, David Lewis, succeeded Tommy Douglas as the head of the federal party. So this is, something that, they've been known within the party. And this is kind of a comeback and a crowning of an NDP spokesperson and his family lineage, which we've seen happen a lot when it comes to Canadian politics, such as, the Trudeaus, the Fords, the Mulrooney's, and so on forth. So now he's campaigned specifically on what we've seen as, going very far to the left. What does that mean? Essentially, there was a vacuum of where the center left is, which is where Carney seems to be sitting. Carney seems to be sitting on the center left and the center right, as what we've seen. But, this isn't really going to work because what it would mean is if they go hard on some of these issues, it might become more of an urban-based voter, because we saw within this leadership election, there was a divide in the faction of the NDP, right? So when he started, Avi Lewis, when he started, running his platform on the wealth tax, right, which is people of $10 million or more will get this taxation, taxing capital gains at the same rate as employment income, higher corporate taxes, more state ownership over industry, and wait for this, it is the ban on new fossil fuel infrastructure. So in a time where we're seeing, the price of fuel go over $100 per barrel, as we're seeing this war carry on, as cost of living is high, this created a bit of a divide, because what we saw is a comeback of some of the other NDP leaders throughout Canada really saying, well, that's not going to be a go-ahead, such as the Alberta NDP leader, Naheed Nanshi. He said, a position on, against fossil fuel infrastructure is against Alberta's interests, right? And we saw that happen also with the Saskatchewan NDP leader, Carla Beck. She actually published an open letter criticizing Avi Lewis's position on energy. So you saw that come up. But then, you had a Manitoba premier Wapnew expressing optimism for this new leader, saying that, these disagreements are normal. So we will see a divide in that sense, because what this is showing is that perhaps maybe Avi Lewis isn't in line with what's happening with Western Canada, and it's more of something that might be a progressive type of reach when it comes to urban younger voters, where he's saying, look, we're being marginalized in terms of, it is the younger voters that, cannot buy a house. Jobs are, we can talk about the job numbers. We saw over 80,000 jobs lost in February, just last month. So there is something that he could do in terms of taking it back, but he also needs to be able to come up with ways of making sure that he's not alienating other parts of Canada to create a momentum, because we know that, you cannot become a national party unless you're able to speak on many different issues and not just regional.
Yeah, very, very good points that you've made. There are three by-elections, in Canada, Scarborough South West University, Rosedale, and one in Quebec. So do you think the Liberals seems to be having a strong chance? The Quebec riding was a block riding, but the Liberals took it back in 2025 just by one vote. Of course, the decision was once again challenged. So now we have block is not the same block, we know, so their numbers are going down. And I was looking at a Main Street poll as well for the Toronto ridings as well. So here we are. Do you think Avi Lewis, I don't think so if he's going to run in any ridings. Do you think he's going to run in any ridings? And what do you make of these three by-elections? Because Liberals are just too shy of majority. So with Avi Lewis coming into the picture, will this make any difference at all? Or you think Liberals still could be winning 2 or 3 seats? They just need 2 for a majority. So Liberals in the majority zone in the next couple of weeks. That is the new thing that could happen at the Ymedia Political Sensex. So a new world, a new political order at Ymedia Political Sensex. I wanted to mention this, a new political order here in Canada as well. Please.
Yeah, this might create a momentum in one of the ridings, Scarborough Southwest, right? We've known for a long time that some of the Scarborough seats, whether it's provincially or federally, we're leaning NDP. So maybe this is a new, sort of surge in that sort of seat. But, you have the advance polls just happening this weekend, right? So they start as of Friday, April 3rd, and they go until Monday, April 6th. So we know that, that we're going to see some of those numbers of how many voters are going to come out to vote. We know in by-elections, it's a report card of the federal government. Essentially, that's what it is. Even though it's estimated that Mark Carney may be able to come to a majority with just 2 seats left, and those ridings, have been Liberal for quite some time. But, we know that it's been a year since Mark Carney has been Prime Minister, and a lot of key issues haven't been addressed, such as affordability, housing, employment. Those haven't been addressed. Yes, he's been actively, making sure that Canada's positioned with its allies overseas and with a lot of, foreign affairs and trade, all foreign. But when it comes to the domestic part, it's very week. So it'll be interesting to see what the average voter, 2 seats in Toronto, right? This is, and it is an affordability crisis. Toronto is one of the most expensive cities to live in Canada, after Vancouver. So, this is a serious thing that he's going to have to show, like, what have you done in the past year? Where are these programs? Yes, you just made an announcement today with Ford on housing, but is that, when does it meet the bottom line in terms of, what I take home at the end of the month, right? Am I able to pay my mortgage? Am I able to pay my rent? Am I able to buy groceries? We know this war in the Middle East is really going to be, when it comes to Canada, a war in the grocery stores, when it comes to affordability even further. So this will be interesting to see how the messaging on the Conservative side is, as well as the NDP. Now, because they're suspecting that by April 13th, Mark Carney may be able to gain his majority with just 2 seats left, we're also seeing that the MPs, the Liberal MPs, are repositioning themselves to consolidate power. They want to, there's speculation that there's going to be a cabinet reshuffling to be able to put key people in certain positions, because then Mark Carney can say, hey, now I can push my full agenda for Canada, which I believe will be part of the talking points that he will put out. But when it comes to the numbers of what we're seeing when it comes to expected growth, like the economic growth is weak, right? We're looking at 1 to 2%, which is below normal. The economy is not in a recession, but it's not strong either, right? That's another thing which we will know that the Conservatives will push, the NDPs will push, that not enough is being done. And when it comes to what Mark Carney's done so far, we can look at his fiscal policy. Essentially, we're seeing the government spending as the key driver of growth, not in the private sector. Of course, we're seeing that that's not the same thing when it comes to key industries such as housing, real estate, all of that has been down. So we still don't know when it comes to trade with our biggest partners, the United States. There's a lot of trade uncertainty when it comes to the CUSMA renegotiation. We know we have a slower population growth. We know we have weak productivity. We know, of course, housing slowdown, especially when it comes to condos, and that's reflective in all of Ontario, and 2 seats need to be won in Ontario. So these are not small things, and we don't know when this recovery for housing is going to take place. We don't know where we're going to have affordability tackled, and what that looks like. Is it going to be more programs? What happened to this interprovincial trade barrier that's supposed to make things more affordable for Canadians to be able to trade within Canada? So all of this is, an issue where, it might be a report card on Mark Carney, where those are things that he's not done so well in, all the domestic stuff, and with inflation at 1.8%, it's near target. The core inflation rate is, of course, the 2%. So, there's still certain things of like, let's wait and see. Let us, do a lot of spending from the federal government, give us some time to see if the economy will react. And maybe in 2 weeks, people are still going to give him a green light and give him his majority, or maybe not. Maybe they think that it's better that this government doesn't have full majority and still has to work with its colleagues, across the floor, such as the Conservatives and, the NDP.
Okay. By the way, Lois, one of the things I also want to quickly mention, he doesn't have a very good track record of winning the seat. He's fought two elections, Vancouver West and Vancouver Centre as well, 2021 and 2025. Both the times he lost. So I'm not sure, because NDP doesn't have a safe seat, with due respect, I'm saying this. And the other issue for NDP would be the leader doesn't have a seat right now, and Avi Lois doesn't have a good track record winning a seat himself as well. So how are they going to get an official party status? That's a challenge for NDP. And as much as I heard Mark Carney, saying that I like to work collaboratively, but I think after 13th of April, there could be a new political order here in Canada. The Liberals were handed a minority government, 169 seats, but now I think it has turned into almost, it could turn into a majority. It could be the magic number 172, or probably even 173, or maybe it stays at 170. We don't know, but there is a fair chance they could have a majority government, and that's what I'm naming a new political order here in Canada. We'll talk more about this, but before I come back onto the affordability, I think we're running short of time. We need to quickly jump on to our Ymedia foreign policy report, because there's lots to discuss in that.
Ymedia Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.